Everyone thinks I'm just a lonely old woman, left behind while my family vacations without me, but they have no idea about the phone call I received the night they left, or the fortune I've been hiding for 50 years. Oh, my dear, let me tell you about the day my heart cracked right open. It was a Tuesday. I remember because Tuesday is when I used to make my famous shepherd's pie, the one with the cheesy crust that Mark has loved since he was a little boy. But this Tuesday, the house was quiet, and the only thing cooking was a single pot of tea for one. You see, my son Mark and his wife Chloe were off on a fancy 2-week Caribbean cruise. All I got was a rushed phone call the night before. "Sorry, Mum," Mark said, his voice all tight. "It was a last-minute deal Chloe found. A real steal. We would have invited you, but, well, you know how you get seasick." Seasick? I've never been seasick a day in my life. I crossed the Atlantic on the QE2 back in '75 and danced every night. But that's the kind of story Chloe rolls her eyes at. She's one of those women you see all sharp elbows and designer handbags. Thinks my floral sofas are tacky, and that my stories are dusty old tales. She's been slowly pulling Mark away from me for years, filling his head with nonsense about elevating their social circle. The morning they left, I stood at my living room window, the lace curtain soft in my hand, and watched a sleek taxi pull away. I saw the back of Mark's head, and I saw Chloe turning to say something to him, laughing. She didn't even look back at the house. It felt like a final cruel snip of the scissors on the last thread connecting me to my boy. I spent the day in a proper funk, I don't mind admitting. I dusted the photo frames, pictures of Mark as a gap-toothed boy, of me and my late Harold on our wedding day. The house felt so big and empty. I was just another piece of old furniture. I thought about all the sacrifices I'd made for Mark after his father passed. Working double shifts at the library, sewing my own clothes, all so he could have the university education I never did. And for what? To be left behind while they sailed off to swim with dolphins? But then, just as the sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple, the phone rang. It wasn't Mark's ringtone. It was a sharp official sound. I answered, my voice a little wobbly. "Hello, Mrs. Eleanor Prescott?" a stern, familiar voice asked. "This is she," I said, sitting up a little straighter. "It's Alistair Abernathy. We need to talk. It's about the trust. The 50-year confidentiality clause has now expired. It is time." My breath caught in my throat. The trust. My secret. The one I'd kept buried for half a century. Harold and I, we weren't just comfortable. We were, to put it plainly, wildly rich. A patent he'd filed in his 20s, a silly little invention for a better battery, ended up being in every phone and car on the planet. We made a pact, you see. We lived a modest, middle-class life to raise a grounded son, and the fortune was locked away in a blind trust, to be revealed to Mark only after my passing, or after 50 years, whichever came first. We never wanted the money to spoil him. And now the 50 years were up. Mr. Abernathy was coming over tomorrow with the paperwork. As I hung up the phone, a slow smile spread across my face. The loneliness vanished, replaced by a steely resolve. Chloe thought she was the captain of a luxury liner. But she had no idea she was about to sail right into a hurricane. My hurricane. The next day, Mr. Abernathy arrived precisely at 10 o'clock, carrying a leather briefcase that looked as old as he was. He was a tall, thin man with a spine as straight as a ruler and eyes that missed nothing. He'd been Harold's friend and our lawyer for 40 years, a vault of our deepest secret. "Eleanor," he said with a slight nod, taking a seat on my floral sofa. He didn't even glance at the pattern. A man of taste. "Alistair," I said, placing a cup of tea in front of him. "Thank you for coming. I assume this isn't a social call." "It is not." He opened his briefcase with a crisp click and pulled out a thick folder. "The confidentiality clause attached to the Harold Prescott Family Trust has officially lapsed as of midnight. The principal, plus all accrued interest, is now fully accessible. I have the statements here." He slid a single piece of paper across the coffee table. I put on my spectacles and looked at the number at the bottom. Even though I'd gotten the annual anonymous statements, seeing it there in black and white made my heart do a little flip. It was a number with so many zeros it looked like a zip code. "Good heavens," I whispered, for effect more than anything. "Indeed," Mr. Abernathy said dryly. The question now, Eleanor, is what you wish to do. The funds are yours to control. You can choose to disclose this to Mark or not. You can disperse the funds or not. The legal obligation for secrecy is over. I took a slow sip of my tea, letting the warmth spread through me. I thought of Chloe's sneering comment last Christmas about my dreadfully outdated kitchen. I thought of Mark's slightly embarrassed smile when I'd offered to pay for his birthday dinner with a coupon. Alistair, I said, my voice steady. I want to know everything. Every stock, every bond, every little piece of this empire my Harold built. For the next 2 hours he walked me through it all. It wasn't just cash in a bank. It was a portfolio. There were stock holdings in tech companies, real estate investments in London and New York, even a small quiet stake in a very famous cruise line. The cruise line. I almost laughed out loud. The irony was too delicious. As he spoke, a plan began to form in my mind, taking shape like a beautiful, intricate piece of lace. I wouldn't just tell Mark. Oh no. That would be too easy. Chloe would swoop in, all fake smiles, and try to get her manicured hands on it. I needed him to see the truth for himself. I needed him to understand the weight of what his father built, and the sheer pettiness of the world his wife was dragging him into. When Mr. Abernathy finished, he gathered his papers. You have my number, Eleanor. What is your first move? I smiled, a genuine Auntie May smile. I think, Alistair, I'd like to go on a holiday. A cruise perhaps. But not just any cruise. I want to book the finest suite on the most luxurious ship they have. The one my son is currently on. Mr. Abernathy, for the first time in 40 years, cracked a smile. The Celestial Odyssey. I shall make the arrangements. First class, of course. Of course, I said, seeing it all unfold. And Alistair? Book it under my maiden name. Eleanor Vance. Let's keep the surprise a surprise for just a little while longer. My dear, you should have seen the look on the steward's face when I boarded the Celestial Odyssey 3 days later. There I was in my sensible shoes and my best navy blue dress, looking for all the world like someone's sweet old granny who'd won a ticket in a raffle. But I was led through the gleaming halls, past the gawking passengers in their flashy resort wear, straight to the owner's suite. Let me tell you, it was bigger than my entire bungalow. A sprawling living room with a grand piano, a bedroom with a bed you could get lost in, and a balcony so large it had its own hot tub. A chilled bottle of champagne sat in a silver ice bucket, a note from the captain himself welcoming Miss Vance. I poured myself a glass. Why not? And settled onto the balcony as the ship began to pull away from the port. Now the tricky part was the chance meeting. I'd studied the ship's itinerary. I knew they had a captain's gala that evening in the main ballroom, a compulsory formal event. I knew Chloe wouldn't miss a chance to wear her new sequin gown. So that evening I put on the one fancy dress I'd packed, a simple but elegant black sheath Harold always loved, and I went down to the ballroom. The place was a riot of crystal and noise. Men in tuxedos, women dripping in jewels. And there, near the champagne fountain, were Mark and Chloe. He looked handsome but uncomfortable in his bow tie. She was preening, scanning the room to see who was most important. I took a deep breath and made my move. I walked right up to the bar next to them and in my clearest voice said to the bartender, "A ginger ale, please. Bubbles don't agree with me these days." I saw Mark freeze out of the corner of my eye. He turned slowly, his face a perfect picture of confusion and disbelief. "Mum," he choked out. "What on earth? How?" Chloe spun around. Her smile vanished, replaced by a look of pure, undiluted horror. "Eleanor," she hissed. "What are you doing here? Did you follow us?" "Oh, good heavens, no," I said, giving a little laugh. "What a lovely surprise. My, it's a small world, isn't it? My friend, Mr. Abernathy, insisted I take a holiday. He said I've been looking peaky. He booked this for me as a treat." "Booked this?" Mark said, still stunned. "But Mum, these cruises are expensive." "Oh, I suppose," I said airily, taking my ginger ale. "But Mr. Abernathy has some connections. He got me a little upgrade." I leaned in conspiratorially. "I'm in the owner's suite. It's quite nice, though the piano is a bit out of tune." Chloe's jaw literally dropped. I swear I heard a tiny click. The owner's suite," she stammered. "That's impossible." That suite costs more than our house. Just then, the ship's hotel manager, a very serious man named Mr. Dimitri, spotted me. He hurried over, bowing slightly. Ms. Vance. Pleasure to see you. I trust the suite is to your satisfaction? The captain asked me to personally ensure you have everything you require. If the piano is not to your standard, we will have a tuner there first thing in the morning. I saw the understanding dawn on Mark's face. The confusion in his eyes deepened into something else, suspicion. Chloe looked like she'd been slapped. The social climber had been utterly outclimbed by the woman she considered a nobody. Oh, it's perfectly fine, Mr. Dimitri, thank you, I said sweetly. I turned back to my speechless family. Well, don't let me keep you. I'm sure you have more important people to mingle with. And with a gentle smile I turned and walked away, leaving them in a wake of bewildered silence. The game was on. The next 2 days were a masterclass in quiet revelation, my dear. I didn't seek them out. They sought me. Mark, bless him, was riddled with guilt and confusion. He'd find me having a quiet cup of tea in the library, or reading on a secluded deck chair. Mom, we need to talk, he'd say, his brow furrowed. This doesn't make any sense. Who is Mr. Abernathy? How can you afford all this? But every time I just pat his hand. It's all perfectly legal, dear. Don't you worry your head about it. Now tell me, are you enjoying the snorkeling? Chloe, on the other hand, had switched tactics. The horror had been replaced by a sickly sweet, calculating curiosity. She'd suddenly want to have lunch with me, complimenting my dress, asking vague questions about my investments. It was transparent as glass. The breaking point came on the 4th day. We were docked in St. Lucia, and I'd invited them to my suite for pre-dinner drinks. I knew this was the moment. I'd prepared. Their faces as they walked into the grand suite was a picture I will cherish forever. Chloe was practically green with envy. Mark was just astounded. This is incredible, Mom, he breathed, looking out at the panoramic view of the pitons. Oh, it's just a room, dear, I said, waving a hand. Now, who would like a sherry? I find it settles the stomach. As I was playing the hostess, I made a show of going to the wall safe, hidden behind a beautiful seascape painting. I just need to get my... Oh, bother, I said, fumbling with the dial. This newfangled thing. My memory isn't what it used to be. Mark, you're good with numbers. Be a darling and open this for me. The combination is November 19th, 72. The date of my wedding to his father. Mark, looking puzzled, came over and spun the dial. The safe door clicked open. Inside, sitting neatly on top of a stack of envelopes, was the one thing I knew would demand an explanation. The original bound copy of the Harold Prescott Family Trust document, with our names embossed in gold leaf on the cover. Mark froze, his hand hovering in the air. What is this? He whispered. Before I could say a word, Chloe, her eyes gleaming with avarice, darted forward and snatched the document. Harold Prescott Family Trust? She read aloud, her voice shrill. She flipped it open, her eyes scanning the first page. Her face went from curiosity to confusion to sheer unadulterated shock. She started reading snippets aloud, her voice trembling. Principal sum confidential for a period of 50 years. Upon expiry, full control bequeathed to Eleanor Prescott. She looked up at me, the document shaking in her hands. This number. This can't be real. This is a fortune. A king's fortune. She turned on Mark, her eyes blazing. You knew. Your family had this all along and you left me scrimping and saving? You let my mother pay for our wedding. No. Chloe, I swear I had no idea, Mark said, his voice rising in desperation. He turned to me, his eyes full of a pain that broke my heart a little. Mom? What is this? Is this real? All these years. We lived in that small house. You worked at the library. While we were rich. The room was silent except for the sound of the ocean outside. Both of them were staring at me, waiting for an answer. The secret was out. Now it was time for the truth. Sit down, both of you, I said, my voice quiet but firm. I poured myself a small sherry, my hand steady. The performance was over. Now was the time for Auntie May's final lesson. They sat on the edge of the plush sofa, looking like scolded children. Mark was pale. Chloe was flushed with a toxic mix of anger and greed. That document, I began, nodding towards the papers in Chloe's hand, is the reason you had a childhood filled with love, not luxury. It's the reason you are the good, hard-working man you are today, Mark, and not some spoiled trust fund brat. I looked out at the darkening sea. Your father, Harold, was a genius. That little battery invention of his changed the world. And it made us very, very wealthy. But on the day we found out, we made a promise to each other. We would keep it a secret. We would live on his salary and my wages, and we would raise you to know the value of hard work, of a pound earned, not given. We didn't want the money to steal your ambition, or your character. Mark's eyes were glistening. All those times you said no to things. The second-hand bike. The school trips you said we couldn't afford. We could have bought the school, darling, I said softly. But we wanted to buy you a soul instead. The money was put into that trust. It was to be revealed to you only after I passed, or after 50 years. The 50 years are up. I turned my gaze to Chloe. And as for you, my dear, you looked at my floral sofas and my simple life and you saw something less. You saw someone to be pitied and pushed aside. You never saw the strength it took to live this secret. You never saw the love that built this fortune. You only ever saw the price tag. I stood up and walked over to the safe. I pulled out the stack of envelopes from beneath the trust document. These are the annual statements. Every dividend, every stock split for 50 years. It's all there. It's real. I handed the entire stack to Mark. It's yours now. The knowledge of it, anyway. The money is still mine to control. And my decision is this. I looked from my son's heartbroken face to his wife's avaricious one. Mark, this money will come to you in full when I am gone. But it will be yours. In your name only. I have had Mr. Abernathy draw up new papers to ensure that. Chloe shot to her feet. You can't do that. We're married. That's my money too. It was never your money, Chloe, I said, my voice like ice. It was Harold's. It was mine. And soon it will be Mark's. What he chooses to do with it will be his decision, based on the values his father and I tried to instill in him. Not on your demands. The silence that followed was heavier than any I'd ever known. Chloe stared at me, her face a mask of furious defeat. Then, without a word, she turned and stormed out of the suite, slamming the door so hard the crystal glasses on the bar chimed. Mark didn't go after her. He just sat there, looking at the stack of papers in his hands, the weight of a lifetime of secrets finally settling on his shoulders. He looked up at me, tears finally tracing paths down his cheeks. All for me, he whispered. Dad did all this. For me? I went and sat beside him, taking his hand. For the man you could become, I corrected him gently. And my dear boy, looking at you now, even with all this confusion, I know we succeeded. He leaned his head on my shoulder, just like he did when he was a small boy, and we sat there in the twilight, watching the tide turn, the old secrets washed away, and a new uncertain future beginning to dawn. The cruise was over, but the real journey for my son was just beginning.